Riveting content. Empowering your life. Welcome to the Sphere. This episode is sponsored by Houston Housewives of Finance. For more information on increasing your cash flow, becoming your own money manager, and to schedule your complimentary personal finance strategy, contact the Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463. Looking to advertise? Join the Sphere's vast demographic reach of thousands of people all over the world. Send an email today to advertise@thesphere.tv or call us at area code 832-772-7789. Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, Dr. Ashandra Batiste understands that one of the biggest obstacles is dental fear. The vision at Elite Dental Wellness is to ensure every patient is treated with respect, ultimate care, patience, and love. Call us today to make an appointment at area code 713-789-8680.
And welcome back to Injustice on the Sphere Podcast Network, where we discuss the laws of the land and how they affect you, the people. I'm your host, Brennan Dunn. You can reach me on Twitter at LegalMind. That's mine with a Y, because there's always a question to be asked and answered. Joined as always by the illustrious and magnificent Alicia Ford. How are you, Alicia?
I'm doing well, Brennan. How are you today?
I can't complain.
All right, and everybody, welcome back to Injustice on the Sphere TV. My name is Alicia Ford, your co-host, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at AllieOnSphere. And Brennan?
Yes, Alicia.
I believe that we have a guest today.
I think you're right, and I think that we have a one Miss Deshonda Tackett who has joined us today. Deshonda, when I say you put Alicia to shame here today, coming in here all glowing and whatnot, how are you?
I'm well. My day just wasn't as hard. That's
Yeah,
all.
you know what? And I am not accepting you pitting two wonderful black women against each other.
Right.
Whatever
I'm
do you
not going to
mean?
allow you to do that. Not today.
What do you mean? Well, Deshonda, go ahead and let us know what kind of law you practice. We want to give you a little shout out first before we begin.
Okay, well, great. I appreciate that. I do civil litigation. My focus is on employment discrimination cases, and I do estate planning. So that's my claim to fame.
All right. Now, y'all hear that, ladies and gentlemen. When you got discrimination suits, you know who to call. Tackett.
And
law firm.
estate planning, which is equally important in the black community.
That means when folks die, y'all know who to hire.
Well,
I tried
actually,
to meld die and hire.
You'd want to do it before
well,
they die.
you know, even before they die, though,
Yeah.
That's
that's
true.
really where the education piece comes in. So that's what I focus on.
Deep.
Even before you die, there's things we got
It's a
to
little
get
too
straight.
late if you're calling her and somebody's dead and they
Yeah.
didn't call her before that.
Yeah, we want to get
Yeah.
we want to get you straight and situated before someone dies. So
Right on.
and look, better transition.
Better transit. Easier.
Easy.
Easier on the pockets, too.
Yes, very much, very much.
Y'all remember that. All these people walking around here with no wills and last testaments. Get it done now and get it done with the Tackett Law Firm. So you've not been on the show before, Deshonda. So what we do is we kind of just jump right on into some easy greasy type information. Feel free to speak your mind as you so feel it, and don't be shy about telling Alicia no, that you don't agree.
Oh,
All right.
I won't be shy about telling her I do agree as well.
I enjoy her today. Thank you.
So the first thing
Thank
that we're going
you.
to talk about, ladies, is Betsy DeVos, one of the Trump administrative hires for the education secretary position. Ms. DeVos has started a crusade against those who are unprivileged and unwhite. And one of those crusades deal with special ed students. The Obama administration designed a safeguard for minority children to ensure that they weren't placed into special education courses at higher rates than other demographics. This rule was supposed to go into effect in 2018, I think in July of 2018. However, DeVos and company has decided to look in-depthly into the Obama era rule to see if they're going to really keep it, scrap it, or change it around. Quite honestly, I don't know what there is to scrap or change about a rule that tries to ensure that one particular student demographic isn't overly placed in a disabled title to endure for the rest of their educational life experience. I think that's one of the issues that we have within minority groups is that we don't really cater to the way they learn. And I think each of you can agree with me, and maybe you don't, that everybody doesn't learn one at the same pace, two in the same style. And there have been studies that have shown different demographics learn in a different way. Just because you teach a white student a certain way doesn't mean that that is going to reflect the same type of study pattern or teaching pattern for the black student or the Latino student, because they come from different backgrounds, which means that the way they receive information is probably going to be a little bit different.
And I'm not even going to go there with it. I'm just going to go with it is more with the thought that minority students tend to be behaviorally challenged children to certain demographics of teachers, and that behavioral challenge ends up turning into special ed testing, and that special ed testing ends up turning into being placed with these disabilities and these special ed classifications that follow these children around. And I'm not saying that there aren't children who don't deserve and who actually need to be tested, but a lot of it is that I don't want to deal with this child. He acts up. He must be disabled or have some kind of disability, or let's put him on some ADHD medicine. And they get this stigma of being placed in this disability rather than, and they'll see a non-minority student with exhibiting the same behaviors, and they'll attribute it to their age, or they'll attribute it to them being a child, or they'll even go as far as to try to understand what's going on in that child's home life that may be having them act out in class or doing such. I mean, we know that, as I think the article called her evil, and that's the nicest sentiment that they could have said. She's the Trump of education. She's basically trying to undo anything that the Obama era did as far as advancing education and making it equal access for all, which is just a tenet of this society. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I just don't want to see any more brown, black, underserved children who get placed in these labels that follow them the rest of their lives, when it probably would just take, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it might just take 6 more months to really help train and help a child understand, rather than throwing them in the special ed and now where they're stuck with this stigma and they're moving through a system without getting the help and learning the skills they truly need to cope.
So Deshonda, Alicia's saying essentially, I think that they're equating bad behavior with disability, with educational disability. What do you think about that?
Well, I think historically in the classroom, that's what we see, especially if you're talking about in schools with mixed populations, or especially when you're dealing with an administration that doesn't have any regard for the cultural distinctions, of the minority student. So we're dealing with an administration that has no clear appreciation for what happens to an educated minority person. So because they can't value the educated minority, they have no value, they can place no value on actually educating them. And so one way to clearly take them out of the pipeline for being educated or having opportunities to excel is to try to correlate behavioral problems with disabilities. That is one surefire way to take them away from your standard, stream of education. And I think that's part of the problem that we're seeing, that if you're not going to value an educated minority, then you really have no incentive to create a vision or develop a plan for actually educating.
But let me ask you this, based on something that you said. Should we encourage more ethnicity on ethnicity teaching, meaning that more black teachers should be teaching black students, more Latino teachers should be teaching Latino students, since they are the better equipped person to understand the background from which a student comes from?
Well, I think we presume they're better equipped, but I do think there is some psychology that goes into being able to take direction from someone you perceive understands you. Now, whether or not that Latino teacher teaching a Latino student actually shares that same experience is probably not going to be the issue. That's not what the student is going to process, but they will be able to identify that perhaps they have the capacity to understand and maybe have compassion for my shortcomings. And so it helps the student perhaps perform better.
Okay, Alicia, let me ask you this. Piggybacking off that same question, what about, do you think that we might need to create some new teaching programs for the teachers where we teach them diversity in teaching? I use teach a lot just now.
So the thing about it is, unfortunately, yes and no. There really should, the only diversity in teaching that a teacher should be learning is learning style and learning and how to make information more accessible to children. As in, some people are visual, some people, and that's the true diversity that a teacher should know, because they should go in educating children without that kind of stigma. You ask the question of, do we need more minority teachers? The huge amount of teachers that are teaching minority, let me phrase this a different way. Minority teachers are generally teaching minority children. And that's really how it is. I mean, and then I guess when you kind of find that influx of people who can't find or who would prefer not to work somewhere else, you find them in minority populated schools, other teachers who, as she said, they don't value an educated person, so they can't understand how to value and how to actually teach a minority child. And so I think what a school would need to do is decide if it needs to invest in diversity training based on its population and based on the population of teachers that it has. Because you can't carte blanche say all teachers need diversity training because y'all don't know how to teach these kids. You really have to look at what that population of students are and look at the people that are educating those students. And if you're finding a continual disconnect between the two, then I can say yes, some kind of sensitivity, diversity, understanding training needs to go on in that campus, because at the end of the day, all we're doing now is pushing out a test, and we're not formulating critical thinking, learning minds, and that's a huge problem right now.
Fair enough. DeShonda, I saw you writing profusely over there. Before we move on to the next subject, is there something else you want to say on that?
I just wanted to add, I think our issue is not so much as diversity across the board with the teachers, but I do think we're doing the teachers a disservice by not allowing them to actually teach accurate information when we do have a diverse population in the schools, but the teachers are being required to whitewash some of the information,
like Christopher Columbus,
or as Ben
Carson
Carson said, we came as there were a bunch of immigrants on those ships.
Exactly, and so I think that plays into a teacher's ability to actually effectively teach the population that they're being called to teach.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to move on. And speaking of Ben Carson, we're going to move on to Ben Carson in just a second. But before we do, I want to go ahead and let you guys know that this portion of the show is sponsored by Houston Housewives of Finance. Did you know that only 4 states in the United States offer financial education? 33% or more than 77 million Americans don't pay their bills on time. 39% of Americans carry credit card debt from month to month. And 39% of adults say that they don't have enough savings. Don't become one of these statistics. Let Houston Housewives of Finance advise you on increasing your cash flow and becoming your own money manager by scheduling your complimentary personal financial strategy. Contact Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463 or email them at info@houstonhousewivesoffinance.com. Ask us how you can participate in a complimentary financial literacy workshop near you. Houston Housewives of Finance is the new face of the new age of financial services. Now, going back to good Ben, Uncle Ben. Ben Carson has just told the world, vis-a-vis a congressional hearing with the Honorable Al Green, that he doesn't have to know anything about housing policy. He just has to be able to boss people around who do. Essentially saying it's all about how you lead and not what you know. Now I watched all of this discussion that he had with the Honorable Al Green, and when I say that Al Green got all up in his ass, I say this with, I don't even know if I'm giving it justice, but there were questions that were asked to Ben Carson, like, how much money? What is a portion to this? Ben Carson's like, oh, well, I'm not going to really tell you all that. I don't need to tell you that. And it was a question of, do you actually know or do you not want to tell us? And it became more and more clear as time progressed that he simply didn't know the answers to fundamental questions that a Secretary of Housing should know. I mean, if you were at the very least, you don't have to know the day-to-day, possibly, but when you get in front of a congressional hearing, knowing that there are going to be certain talking points, and you can't even bring out the modicum base of knowledge that's prerequisite for this kind of discussion, I think that you are failing in your job, not let alone knowing what you're supposed to be doing on the day-to-day. DeShonda, thoughts?
I tend to agree with that assessment. I mean, the fact that he would say he doesn't have to know, all he has to do is boss people around, just shows how inequipped he is to actually boss people around. I mean, you're not going to be able to actually guide or lead or tell anybody what it is they should be doing or hold them to a particular standard or make sure they're achieving policy that you should be setting
and implementing.
If you don't know what the policy is you should be setting. I mean, it just reminds me of the blind leading the blind. I mean, are you going to let your employees tell you what they should be doing and then reward them for doing whatever it is they say?
You accomplished the goal that I hoped we got accomplished.
Exactly. If they're going to be setting the plan. So, no, I tend to agree. I mean, it just reveals how clueless he is about what his role should be, what his role is, and how much he really does not care.
And so the problem with Ben Carson is we all know that this is Trump's diversity pick because he had those accusations against him for the housing discrimination. I mean, that's the only reason why I think Ben Carson is the
Ben Carson is the dumbest smart guy that I know.
My thing about it is and it just goes to show how incompetent this administration is. And it goes to show that he is now learning from the top, which is Trump, because Trump didn't even use the resource that is Ben Carson, which is a neurosurgeon, which is a doctor, to put him in a place where he can lead something that has to do with medicine, where he can lead something that has to do with healthcare, something that he is intimately familiar with because he's trained in that. As you said, you can lead anybody, but you have to have a clear vision. You have to be able to communicate that vision to the people that are under you in order to execute, and they have to see you working on the vision.
Absolutely.
You have to give the people buy-in, and if you don't have buy-in, you're never going to be a good leader. And he obviously has no buy-in because people can see and you know what? I'm not even going to hold it past him. Let's just say that he didn't know anything about housing. It doesn't even seem like he's willing to educate himself about what it takes to run HUD. And so now we're placing Americans to their own detriment in greater peril because we have incompetent people leading such important parts of society. We have this man leading housing and urban development, which covers things like Section 8. I mean, and now they're taking budget cuts, which means he's going to be, we already know Ben Carson thinks you just got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
I'm pretty sure if you ask Ben Carson, he would say, well, if you don't like Section 8, you can go to Section 9.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That sounds like something
And so we have a problem with a man it is, he is an evil to the people that he serves because he does not know what he's doing, one. And even if he didn't know what he's doing, he doesn't want to know what he's doing,
Right.
which is number two.
Exactly. He doesn't want to know what he's doing. And like you're saying, because he doesn't have any incentive, or it doesn't appear that he has any incentive to figure it out, he can't even determine when the budget cuts come, how that is going to negatively impact the programs he should be running and leading. So, therein lies the problem.
And you look at, but like again, it's just the same thing. Trump doesn't know anything about anything. And he supposedly has a bunch of people around him knowing something about.
I feel like he
too.
picked a cabinet that adequately reflected his position in life.
Yes.
Nothing.
Absolutely.
But Deshaun, in case you didn't know, we've got a whole bunch of Facebook live people that watch this show every time it airs. And we want to go ahead and take time out to say thank you and hello to all those Facebook Live viewers that are out there right now. We ask that you subscribe to our show on all the major platforms, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher. Review our show on iTunes with constructive feedback. Share this Facebook Live post and the entire show with family and friends. And remember, we need those coins. So donate to our mission to bring enriched and inspiring content to you each and every week. You can donate at www.thesphere.tv/donate. Thank you, Facebook Live, and we'll see you next time. And make sure to watch the rest of the show as it drops on www.thesphere.tv.
See you, Facebook.
So since we're talking about the cabinet and politics, we'll stay in that vein, and we'll talk about the Vice President Mike Pence just broke a tie as the Senate voted to repeal certain banking rules. This banking rule, essentially, it was something that the Credit Bureau the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau had a regulation in place that the banking industry had been lobbying against. This particular regulation banned most types of mandatory arbitration clauses found in the fine print of agreements with consumers. And what does that mean? That simply means that if you had an agreement, a disagreement with a banking institution over their practices, they could force you into arbitration based on that fine print that you had signed, not knowing what was what. And arbitration simply meant that instead of being able to file a lawsuit, you have to go before an arbitrator and have your case heard there. A lot of people don't like arbitration. One, because it costs a lot of money sometimes to pay you have to pay for an arbitrator to start off. You can recoup some of those costs if you win, but those upfront prices are kind of steep sometimes. The other big portion of this is that it essentially stops consumers from banding together to have a class action suit and just go sue the banking entity. So instead of saying, you know what, all of us have a problem, why don't we go file a class action lawsuit and make the companies really sweat over this? The banks gets to say, we'll just deal with you individually and cut our losses as they come, which is by and far saves them millions, if not hundreds of millions to billions of dollars at the end of the day in legal fees and in settling lawsuits that they don't have to pay out in large sums to class action suit participants. I think we're heading in the wrong direction here.
I tend to agree with that. The problem I have with backpedaling on whether or not we do away with mandatory arbitration clauses is the secrecy of arbitration. So most often, if you're going to go into arbitration, 99% of the time, it's going to require that whatever happens there's a confidentiality agreement that can't be broken. So the public never really gets to identify what your claim was and what the result was. And that's a problem when you've got financial institutions taking advantage of the average consumer, and the public doesn't really get to be privy to that. And so I think that's why the banking industry was fighting against it. But I also think that has something to do with why Pence is voting the way that he's voting. Because if consumers can't band together and create that public pressure to force financial institutions to do right by the consumer, then they really have nothing to fear if they're going to engage in destructive practices that
Predatory practices.
predatory lending practices and things that are going to negatively impact the financial futures of the consumers who need the financial services. So I agree that we're going down the wrong path, but I think for so many different reasons, it's a bad
when you think
decision.
about it, like you said, binding arbitration is an individual action. You're not going to class together and in binding arbitration if you have a problem with and I don't hate to say this, what they've done is they've now made an unequal power between one, the banking institution, and two, the average consumer who may enter binding arbitration. Because when you're thinking of binding arbitration, you're going to have, and that the banking industry is going to have an attorney. They're going to have a staff of lawyers that are going to sit there and fight against this suit because that's what they're billed to do. They're going to look at your stuff, go home, and call it another day. You're going to have to hire somebody to represent you if you mistakenly represent yourself. And then and arbitration is no quick and, it's not like, hey, let's go in. They have to look over paperwork. They have to sit there and make sure that their arguments are sound. So you're paying out of pocket for something that's going to add up quickly. And it may add up to more than what you're going there for, which, instead we can't class together and say, hey, we've seen, for example, with Wells Fargo, I believe the last thing they were doing was charging people who had auto loans with them car insurance, and then when they already had their own third-party insurance, and when the people weren't paying the third party, the Wells Fargo auto insurance, they were actually repossessing the cars. So when you think about things like this, and we wouldn't have found out if people had not banded together and said, wait a minute, why am I being charged for car insurance that I don't need when I already have this? And why are you repossessing my car for non-payment of insurance that I never signed up for?
Well, I think the banking industry knows that old adage, there's strength in numbers. And at the end of the day, when you've got the numbers against you, then you're more likely to kowtow to them, and say, you know what? You're right. We're wrong. We don't want that kind of pressure. We don't want that kind of bad publicity because we've got 300 people looking at us versus the individual you. And at the end of the day, if I can get rid of the individual you, I don't have to worry about everybody else.
And I think the problem it comes down to, we are unfortunately, again, making the imbalance of wealth and power in this country even greater. The average person, I know I'm not in the 1%. I'm not even in, right. I'm in the 99.99999%, like the rest of this country. And unfortunately,
are you dark child?
And so
some of y'all gonna get that.
And I get it. And so my thing about it is, I don't know how their constituents are okay with the decisions that they're making
because they're Republican.
And that's the crazy thing about it. None of what they're doing is in their best fiscal interest.
Since when have Republicans voted for people that are going to actually have the good fiscal policies in mind for them? Healthcare. That is a Democratic policy, or universal health care is a Democratic policy that Republicans are against. And you're telling me that Republicans don't want health care for themselves? I mean, we know what it's all about, the mighty dollar. And at the end of the day, it's what the big bank lobbyists and other lobbyists, big farm, what they're able to pay for. But we've got something over here in the news. And I think before we talk about the next issue, there's something, Alicia, that you want to get out for us, right?
I do. I want to let you know that this portion of the show is sponsored by The Sphere. Are you starting your business and looking for a place to advertise? Do you have a need to reach out to thousands of people across the world to build your brand and sell your product? If so, get your product placement and advertising needs handled right here at The Sphere. We offer a wide variety of content delivery platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Plus, we have a vast demographic reach within the United States as well as modern countries across the globe. Our enriched content and inspiring dialogue coupled with your strategic ad is surely to hit the mark every time. Call us today at area code 832-772-7789 or send an email over to advertise@thesphere.tv.
So something new that again we're talking about lobbyists, we're talking about Congress. So something else with Congress right now as we transition. Attorney generals from 17 U.S. states have urged Congress in a letter to abandon legislation that would require states to validate concealed gun permits issued in another state, regardless of their own gun law restrictions. This Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017, the attorney generals are citing, could lead to the death of police officers and civilians, the proliferation of gun traffickers, and the acts of terrorism and other mass violence. I have mixed feelings on this. And I think my feelings start with, one, if it's good enough for one state, why isn't it necessarily good for the next state? Two, is this an issue that should be a federal issue? Because if we already know that that it's a state's right on how they manage federal constitutional law, because you have a constitutional right to bear arms, and then the state gets to dictate exactly how they're going to enforce that law to some degree. If they get out of line, then the Supreme Court steps in and says, well, the way you're enforcing it is unconstitutional. But I kind of don't see a big problem with a carte blanche universal gun carry law if we're all on the same page. And maybe that's part of the problem, that some people think that, well, in New York, we've got extremely restrictive laws on who can carry. And then in Texas, they may be saying, well, y'all are real loosey-goosey with it. We don't want that kind of loosey-goosey law being translated over to us. Is this an issue that should be federally mandated and say, you know what, we're going to make it universal, but we're going to put one guideline in for all newcomers?
No. What's not 10th Amendment? What's not handled by the federal government is left to the states. The states best know how to police their own citizens. And so the reason is because somebody up in North Dakota, I think of all the Odas and the Idahos and all of those states where it's just generally plains, mountains. There's a lot of that hunting and that culture up there. They may not need the type of restrictive laws that a New York may need. They may need a little laxer law. Maybe they need a special class of weapons that's allowed or concealed. I
don't really understand that, though. Bad people are going to be bad people no matter where they are.
My thing about it is they are going to be wherever they are, but that's up to the states to define how they want to do that. And there's no need for the federal government to step in and say, hey, you know what? The states decide how they want to handle it, and that's just basically what it is.
So you don't agree with this Reciprocity Act?
You can't leave everything to the federal government. At some point, they have to be able to govern their citizens. And if they so choose to want to govern their citizens in a certain way, because I don't have to respect your license. I want you to come to my state, learn my gun laws, and get your license. I don't want reciprocity with gun laws. I want you to come here, learn what it means to carry in this state, and get licensed.
So then what if and Deshauna, you might be able to piggyback on this answer. What if we were to take what we believe to be the most restrictive of the gun law states and use that as the litmus?
But I think that's just what you're arguing against, right? Like, really, you should take the least restrictive and let that be the overall federal mandate, and that let every state then begin to funnel it down or restrict it.
Now I've gone through the rigmarole of trying to get my gun license here. I am a concealed, or I guess it's an open carry license holder in the state of Texas. That gets me, I want to say 30 some odd states or so that I have reciprocity with. The number's off. But I don't want, in those states where I don't have it, I don't want to have to go back, retest, redo this. I know that I'm a conscientious gun toter. I'm not going to shoot you unless you cross me.
I don't know that.
Well, I haven't shot you yet, Alicia, so you should know.
I don't know that, but then I question your motives. If you are living in a jurisdiction where you're allowed to open carry, or you can have a concealed handgun license and you can carry, I question your motives of going to a state that may have more restrictive laws that do not allow for it, and you're demanding that you be able to carry.
Well, what if I just move there? I moved from here to, I don't know, Illinois.
Same way you change your address. Just Take
But it's
that,
not
Lex?
just about. I have to retake. I have to redo everything. No one wants. Do you want to retake your driver? Go to the DMV and go through all that? No. Don't even lie.
Nobody
Don't
wants
even
to do
fix
it,
your
but
mouth
don't
to
get
lie.
me started.
That's like apples and rocks.
No,
Okay,
it's like
Because
guns and roses.
There's no way that I'm gonna drive a car differently in Arizona,
And there's no way I'm
that
gonna pull out my gun any differently in
you don't know
Illinois.
that.
Well, my only, I guess, response to that would be you also would consider their law enforcement manpower. What are their resources, and why are they choosing to be more restrictive?
Probably
Maybe
because
that's
you're in a
just
more
not.
Republican state versus a Democratic state, or a liberal state versus a conservative state.
Agreed, but I
A more
think they're.
black state than a white state. You know.
But I agree. I have mixed feelings on it. I like my gun, but I
Go
can
ahead, girl.
respect if I'm, desiring to travel somewhere that maybe doesn't have the same Texas loosey-goosey gun laws. So I have mixed feelings too. I'm not sure where that's going to go. And these 17 attorneys generals, on one hand, I feel like they're just kind of arguing into the wind. I'm not sure how far that'll go anyway.
Well, the Supreme Court over in Virginia has agreed to hear an appeal filed by an advocacy group that challenged a decision that was upheld the constitutionality of 11 state legislative districts, essentially saying that about a redistricting case and gerrymandering. A nonprofit organization aimed at fair redistricting sued the state on the grounds that the 11 districts were politically gerrymandered. The plaintiffs also argued that the districts were not compact as required by law. So when you think about what it means to gerrymander in redistricting, let's assume you have this square, and in the middle of that square, the vast majority of it is one type of person. Let's call them black, and you've got a majority that's in this circle of the square that's all black, but you don't want the black people to have the power to be able to vote like that. So what they do is start curving around in certain slices,
Into it.
and saying that, we'll take a little piece of this circle right here, but with this large offset of white in the corner, and make that part of the black, but the majority is white. We'll do it again right here and start to make slivers instead of making what most people would think would be the rational, either squares to make sure that every portion is portioned correctly. And so they started to cherry pick how they redistrict. And that's essentially what gets you to gerrymandering in the redistricting. And they're saying that instead of these, and I guess they tried to write the law to say, they used, it had to be compact, contiguous, and constituted as to give as nearly as practical representation in proportion to the population of the district. Those are the three main criteria. And they're saying that it wasn't compact and it wasn't proportioned correctly. This is not anything new, but it's surprising that we continue to have it to me, it's such a blatant action, but people get away with it all the time, and I don't understand it.
Well, and I think when I think about redistricting, the point is it should be compact because you should have representation where the greatest number of people. If you have 100,000 people in one center and you've decided there needs to be 5 people for 100,000 people, you don't split them and curve them up in a way so that that proportion, for example, black people don't get to choose their 5 representatives to represent them. Instead, you're going to break up those people in a way where they're going to pull in, maybe they're going to pull in maybe 5, from here or 10 from there. And now we're not left with the proper representation for the population. And I think that's the problem. We are not having the proper representation. So the political leaders who are in the Congress, in our state, in the Congress and Senate, state and federally, are not reflective of the people that live there. They're not reflective of their population. And so we keep wondering, well, why do we have these people turning down arbitration agreements? So
Right.
we keep wondering, why do we have these things going on? And I think it's especially telling, it's about to be the 2018 election. They're trying to get this done fast, smooth, and in a hurry so that they can go ahead and set this up for the midterms so that they can hold their power in the House and the Senate federally and on the state level. And that's going to be a problem. I really wish more people would smarten up. I mean, and especially in the black and minority community, we need to smarten up. We need to start making sure we are electing representatives that look like us, or if let's stop. They don't even have to look like us, but they represent our interests correctly and dynamically in the government so that we can make sure that when we have something like, we're not going to cut Obamacare. We're not going to say no to these subsidies because I need a subsidy, because I need health care. And so now and I keep telling everybody, y'all know I preach this all the time. Nobody takes something from you that's not valuable. Okay, they don't steal your wallet because there's no money in there.
They steal your heart.
They take it because they know there's something valuable in there. They're taking your vote because they know it's valuable. And I don't think that we are really equating our vote to a value into what it means to our future. And I think that's the problem. We're just thinking of it as just like, oh, it's just a vote. Well, no, it is a vote. It
right,
is
and
a
it
vote
means
for your future.
something, absolutely. And I think that's why we're still seeing that in 2017. Like you said, why is this still being debated? Because voting as a block could be a powerful tool to getting useful legislation helpful to our community. And like you said, our current leaders know that, and they don't want to yield to that. So they're going to do everything they can to continue to dilute the vote or to cut into those voting blocks.
And it's funny that you talk about wallets and stealing from wallets, Alicia, because there was a Pennsylvania man that has been accused of stealing a wallet near a court payment window and using the money to pay his fines. Police allege that 31-year-old Stephen Rago of Vandergrift was caught on security camera taking a wallet left on the counter at Allegheny Township District Judge's office. Camera showed the man putting the wallet in his pocket, going to the bathroom, then paying the fine with cash. The person who owned the wallet said that $100 was missing, but Rago later paid the money back. Rago was charged with misdemeanor theft. Now, this case, we're talking about this case because I find it so interesting that he's being charged with theft for an item that was left, a lost item or a forgotten item. I don't know. So if we go back to, law school, and you're talking about that common law theory of theft, there has to be some intent to take something from another.
He intended to take the personal property, the taking
but
and carrying
there's
away the
also a
personal property
caveat
of
for
another.
abandoned items. And I don't know if we get to, I mean, if somebody leaves their stuff there, I don't know why I should have to give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, excuse me, sir. You may have left $1,000
Can I tell you
here.
something?
Do you mind
I
if
have a question
because
for
guaranteed
you.
if somebody if there's $1,000 or whatever amount of money that's left, and somebody comes and asks me, hey, is this yours? Sure.
Absolutely.
Well,
Is it green?
Right.
Well, and
Is it
because the
dollars?
Lord left it for me, therefore it is mine.
And I don't really know. And so, okay, I just want to ask, are you there? Because you reaching. Like, and you have not
what is
got
the
there.
I feel like Deshaun and I are on the same side on this.
When you're thinking about
Baby.
it,
Let me
we're
tell
sitting
you.
here and we're thinking about this man who was probably standing in line watching this occur. So it's not as if to say I walk into the courthouse.
But it's not my
and there's
duty to
wallets
tell
on
you
wallets
that you
on
forgot
wallets.
something.
It's not my duty to tell you that I forgot something, but I also know that is not my property. And
He never said it was.
Can you qualify that something is abandoned if it's forgotten? I mean, because
Yes.
abandoned property, it has to be left for so long for it to be.
It was left long enough for me to find it.
Yeah, I think the problem he ran into is that he simply took it into the restroom and then paid his own fine with it.
I don't see that being a problem.
Well, he stayed there long enough to get caught. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
My girl.
He stayed there long enough to
if
get
you
caught.
don't, you don't shit where you eat. Is that what you're telling me?
Kind of the
That's what you're
problem.
telling
I
me.
think that's
He
where
was not
he
supposed
got
to
caught.
go to Walmart
I'm
and get
not
groceries.
saying I agree.
You got me scared for a second, girl.
I'm not saying I agree.
But we back on the same
I'm
page.
just saying, he took it into the bathroom and did what he had to do.
So what he should have done was paid with his debit card, and then took that new cash and went and reimbursed
He's
himself.
obviously not the smartest.
Right.
or the brightest.
I just don't think you charge somebody with theft for seizing on the Lord's opportunity.
Oh, wow. That's what we've got here.
That's
Okay.
what it is.
Well, but I think, and you know what? You bring up a good point, because when I first read the story and encountered it, I really could care less whether the wallet was abandoned, lost on the floor for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, a day. We don't know how long it was there. But the fact that they did charge him reflects the problem that I see that we're having. I'm from
With $100.
With $100, but I'm from
That he
New
gave
Orleans.
back.
Yeah, but listen. So here's the thing: these courts know that that's where they're going to make their money. If they charge him with theft and they really have no intent of holding him, they want the fine. They want more money. They want more money, and that's really what they're trying to do.
His problem was he was just too honest. That's what it was.
Wait a minute. Where did we
problem
cut?
was.
Wait. So he was too honest because he paid back the money that was never his?
He should
That
have
he
ran
took?
out. Like
Now,
Deshonda said.
Now, I'm not. Now,
run out.
I'm not gonna sit here and say, like, if I see like $500 on the floor, I'm just gonna be like, whose money
That's
is
what
this?
that's what you saying.
I'm not saying,
That's what you saying.
but I'm going to posit that I'm sure they watched the video.
If
and
you
he
saw-
might have been in line behind the man and saw the man leave it.
If you saw
And you're
Pookie
plotting-
drop a wad of cash, a roll that about yay thick, I want the camera to yay thick, a roll of cash, and Pookie just kept on walking, would you pick it up and say, "Excuse me, Pookie sir, please lend me your hand to get back this money"?
You know, I'd
be damned if you do.
Like, look, if we're in a
Right.
public place and Pookie is not aware of the things that he has on his person, and they so casually fall out.
That's
of
what
it,
happened to
that-
this man.
No,
Oh,
the man was
come on.
at the window paying for something,
And he was not aware to take it.
Well, he
You
left his
obviously didn't have as much
He
care about your
left
money.
his wallet.
It's
Yeah,
just-
the
I
wallet
just-
was there.
I can't.
We take care of those things that we
there-
care
On the
about.
spectrum, I'm going to go with abandon. If there's a spectrum
there
for what
you
he
go.
did with the wallet,
There
I'm
you
going to
go.
go with abandon.
You go,
so
girl.
I don't know that, I agree he had this,
Malicious
obligation
intent
to return it. But
I mean,
like I
like-
said, I
Deshonda,
think
when
the
we talk
problem
about
is-
abandonment, we're going to talk about how the Supreme Court in Louisiana has gone with reckless abandon in discussing
man.
a young cat, Warren DeMame, who I got to take a breath before I say this. So he's getting questioned by the police. They're trying to charge him up on some things, saying, "Look, we believe you did X, Y, and Z." DeMame says, "Look, if y'all already think I did it, give me a lawyer, dog." And the police say that this was brought up as a suppression issue in his trial because they did not give him a lawyer after making that statement, "Give me a lawyer, dog." And that is the quote, "Give me a lawyer, dog." The police say that, well, they were confused by what he asked for. He was not clear. It was an ambiguous statement. And the Louisiana Supreme Court has agreed with them, saying that they were going to uphold the ruling on the suppression, which means that they did not suppress it, and ultimately he was found guilty. I am beside myself with irritation that the Supreme Court could fix their mouths, so to
Their
speak,
tails.
to say that he was ambiguous when he said, "Give me a lawyer, dog," saying that, well, we don't know if he meant lawyer dog or a lawyer, comma, dog, as if someone has the ability to say, speak commas in their words.
Well,
and the very fact that you said the word lawyer should
Well,
be enough.
the thing about it is, first of all, you're looking past the plain meaning of the words. Give me a lawyer, dog. If you've never heard of a lawyer, dog, and you've questioned around the legal community, if you are so confused and everybody comes back and say, "I think he's just asking for an attorney," then you need to give him an attorney.
Or hear me out. If he asks for a lawyer dog, you go take the time to go find a motherfucking lawyer dog.
Yes, and bring
Until-
it. This
until
what
you
you
can
meant.
find-
Bring it to him
Right.
until you can
Exactly.
figure it out. All right, we're done here
Yeah.
until we can find a lawyer
Because
dog,
we couldn't
whatever
find
that
Crypto,
is.
the super dog. We couldn't find Scooby, the investigative dog. But we were looking for the lawyer dog.
This is definitely going to
and,
go.
and how
on
dare you? I
appeal.
mean, this to me is
Yeah.
the epitome of the divide within ethnic understanding. If we can't even on the base level understand a person of color and the things that they try to relate to you as it pertains to some clear ass words, how can you expect to understand what we talk about when we say Black Lives Matter?
I think throughout the whole time they knew what he was asking for. They put the ambiguity into it because
The Supreme Court as well?
Everyone.
Absolutely. Everybody
I
who
agree.
agreed with it,
Yeah.
they put the ambiguity into it so that they could protect their decision to deny him a lawyer.
This needs to go to the Supreme
Period.
Court of the
Well,
United
and-
States.
There is no ambiguity anywhere on the
First
planet
of all,
with
if
any
somebody-
lawyer practicing
if somebody
in
said,
Louisiana.
"Get me a lawyer dog," I would say this man wants a lawyer. First of all, if
Well,
you're a police, but even if you're a
you're a
police
black girl.
officer and you're also used to, picking people off the street, questioning them, you've encountered many ways in which people have asked for an attorney.
Because you know what a lick
And
is,
so,
you know what a hit is, you know what they
you
talking
know
about.
how
I'm
to
trying to
use all
snatch
this-
something up,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But you don't know what a lawyer
now,
dog
all of
is.
a sudden, you are just clueless as to the man is asking for a lawyer.
I think anyone who has watched Law and Order knows the various ways you can ask for a lawyer.
And I think it's
I
hate
think
to
it's
say this, but
ridiculous.
when are these baby boomers going to go ahead and just retire? Like, I'm just because really that's running
Well,
this.
they're not gonna
That's
retire.
who,
They gotta die.
That's who is running this
Not to
country
say they
right
have to be
now.
killed,
It's a
but
bunch of baby boomers.
They're not going to leave until they die. I want y'all to be
to
very
me-
clear. I wasn't talking about
Right.
killing all these old white men.
we
We're just going to
understand.
wait peacefully until they go off into yonder good night.
What frustrates me about it, though, is it seems to require more specific language to ask for a lawyer, which we've already been there. We've already had that fight and gotten to the point where all a suspect has to do is ask for a lawyer. There are no special phraseology you have to use to ask
Right.
for a lawyer other
Well,
than
give me a lawyer.
You can't get any
you
more
could
clear.
stop at lawyer.
You can't.
Yeah,
and to
you
be
want a
fair,
lawyer.
you can't ask the question.
A lawyer, huh? I
Yeah.
mean, how many more ways can you ask for a lawyer?
And to be fair, you can't. The ambiguity usually, the Supreme Court has said, if you say, I think I might need a lawyer, that's not enough. You have to make a declarative statement saying, I want a lawyer. However, I don't know if it gets more declarative than that. And what's irritating also about this is that usually they look at these cases in the light most favorable to the defendant. And to
Supposed
me,
to be.
there's no possible way that you could have done that in this case. And I think that this is one
because
of
they were
those.
confused as to how. I mean, because of all the lawyer dogs that they've encountered.
I want the
I
Supreme
just
Court of the
didn't-
United States to come back and say, if the word lawyer is used by a defendant in custodial interrogation, that will trigger it. I think that that's what we need. As long as I say, man, what about a lawyer? Boom, that should trigger it. No matter what's being said, because everybody's not going to be savvy about how to say it.
Yeah.
The proper
You're
way.
in
to
nervous.
custody.
Yeah,
Exactly. You're being
nervous.
questioned and you're in custody. You may not be as eloquent
Get
as
me
if you
a
were
I
on the
can't
block.
believe that they just sat there and that. I can't believe that this is an actual thing.
That's how I felt when
Yeah.
I read it. I think everyone knows that you ask for a lawyer dog, and I mean, comma dog. It's colloquial.
I
Well-
mean, and if not, and if you bring me a lawyer and I say that's not what I'm talking about, then go give me my lawyer dog. You know, just
It's something
just-
about
Whatever that
the
is.
South that surprises people all the time, and it's surprising what's going on in Alabama too.
But before we get there, we'd like to let you know
Ooh,
that
you
this
just gonna
portion
take
of the
over my
show
segue.
is sponsored by Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, our vision is to create a welcoming practice that will offer exceptional dental care and a lifetime of dental wellness. We are committed to the finest possible oral care and overall health and well-being of our patients. Elite Dental Wellness is built upon a foundation of integrity, expertise, and service. Through our commitment to modern dentistry, continuing education, and friendly atmosphere, we strive to make our patients feel that they are a part of our family. Dentistry can be scary, daunting, and uncomfortable. Dr. Batiste and her team work tirelessly to ensure your comfort. Make your appointment today with Dr. Chandra Batiste at Elite Dental Wellness and call them at 713-789-8680.
Well, after I was so rudely taken over with my segue,
Why? Because we want everybody to have good oral care, so it's not rude.
We do.
Yes.
We do.
Okay.
Like I was saying. There's an Alabama law that was barring teachers from having sex with their students. that was ruled unconstitutional by a state judge who also dismissed the charges against 2 instructors who were facing 20 years behind bars. Judge Glenn Thompson dismissed charges against a former high school teacher, Carrie Witt, 44 years old, and David Solomon, 27, a former aide at a different school. So under the state law, school employees that engage in a sex or act or deviant sexual intercourse with a student, even if consensual, face not only possible jail time but also a lifetime on the sex offender registration. Witt was accused of sleeping with 2 students aged 17 and 18. Solomon was accused of having sex with a 17-year-old. However, the judge stated that he believed that the law was unconstitutional because the students were over 18, had a constitutional right to engage in consensual sexual intercourse, and that the teachers were part of a class that would deny them equal protection under the law if the law was upheld. Meaning that because these were 18-year-olds, for everybody else in the general population, or 17-year-olds, because everybody else in the population would generally have the right to have sex with them no matter their age, older than 17, that requiring a teacher to be subverted to a different type of standard would be equal protection. These teachers should have the same type of protection under the law as every other person similarly situated.
I don't see why a student under your tutelage can't be protected class against sexual advancement from the person that is basically instructing them.
Well, should that be a civil or criminal issue though? Because
That's
I
a criminal.
can, I don't
That's
see,
a
but why
criminal.
should it be a criminal issue and not a civil issue? If you don't want teachers, I mean, sure, fire them by all means.
But
you don't think that there's something to be said about the criminalizing that for adults?
It's grooming. It's almost grooming. These teachers have developed a relationship with the students, gained their trust.
What if
and
they
now
weren't? What if they
pray-
weren't their teacher?
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter for your
first of all,
argument.
so what? But at the same time, teachers just don't go find a child in the hallway
You don't
that
know
they
what
don't
they're
know.
doing.
Teachers don't go find a
But-
child in the hallway
but
and go have
Alicia,
sex with the
what-
with the
what if
they have
it
sex with
isn't
the
in their
children that
ch-
they encounter.
But what if
and
they're
they
not
have
in their
formulated-
class? Give me the argument for that.
If
Because
they're not
you
in their
said
class
that they've groomed them.
So just because you're not in my class does not mean I don't have interaction with you as a child at my school. Maybe I'm
So
your
a high
coach.
is enough to groom somebody?
What?
A passing high. Hey there, student. That's enough to groom
I
somebody?
don't believe that these teachers are having passing high relationships.
Well, not
I
once they
believe-
start sexing them up. But I'm talking about before that.
Well, so you don't think that it can start with a high?
And I do. I think that's the problem because you're putting students in almost a no-win situation. They are forced to go to school every day. This isn't, they're not choosing to be there every day. They're not choosing to go to work every day. To go along with your argument that you would encounter them outside of school and no one else who engaged in consensual sex with a 17, 18-year-old in that state would be subject to the same criminal penalty. But the students are forced to be in their presence, and it allows
Y'all
the
making
teachers.
these 17-year-olds look like they
Well,
don't
I
know
think
what the hell
it's
they're doing in
psychological,
life.
and I think it allows teachers to manipulate the
They don't.
student into
Okay.
thinking that they are giving full, all-knowing
Look,
consent.
Did we not
if you
fix
will
the
let
problem?
if you will let an 18-year-old go to war, why can't you let this 18-year-old smash who he wants to smash?
What?
Well, because I think
Hey, you want me to repeat it?
No, I would like.
Oh, okay,
Deshauna
'cause I
to
can
finish
say it
her
again.
thought.
my thing is
I stand up
think,
for 18-year-old rights,
Stop.
damn it.
I think 18-year-olds should have some rights, and obviously they should be able to date their peers or someone close there too. But
What
I
if this
think
was a
when you're
21-year-old
putting,
teacher?
I think it's a problem because now you're opening Pandora's box for this 21-year-old teacher, because then if you have that same
Well, she opened her
18
own
year-
box.
She opened her own box. I got it.
Okay.
But if you have that same 18-year-old student, then make sexual advances to this 21-year-old teacher. Oh, now she's going to want to use the protection that she's a teacher and she's being assaulted by this adult student person
But I'll ask
who
you the
accosted
same.
her in the class, and now she doesn't
Well,
want it.
I'll ask you the same question, Deshonda. Should it be a civil issue or a criminal issue?
I think if we're talking about protecting our students, if we're going to be able to educate them and have them have a clear mind about being educated, I think it's probably teetering on a criminal issue. In the same vein as you wouldn't want your doctor who has to put you in a vulnerable position to treat you, you have to create a relationship of trust. And so you manipulate that relationship so that you can acquire a sexual benefit from it. I think if we have professional standards for doctors and their patients, and a lot of the penalty would be criminal if doctors violate that trust. And
I don't think that should be criminal. I think that there might be a civil.
It might not, but I'm giving you the same argument. Whether
Fair
we
enough.
think it should be or not, I'm just saying what
Well,
it
my
is, and I
problem
think why it strikes a chord when you're
is
allowing
also
teachers
that
to
you're
do it.
allowing teachers. Now let's just even stop there. This is opening up just a whole horrific series of events, because there are hundreds of students that are 17 in that school.
But what about
So
parental choice?
And so then when you think about it, you are now giving this grown person access to just, as much as we want to say if they want to go to war, that's true, because they are now choosing to make a living for themselves. And if they choose to go into the army, that's them choosing. That is their
And they choose to knock that teacher down.
No, they are choosing their vocation after they've gotten out of high school and said, hey, this is what I want to do. But at the same time, you are now opening this floodgate. This one teacher, for example, could then sleep with 60 different children in that school. And you're saying that that is okay?
Well, being a hoe is not for me to judge.
Wait.
But that's
Right.
not even.
Who are me
you
to
really,
judge?
You really wouldn't even have to. You probably wouldn't have to get to that level if you're a tenured teacher and you're there long enough.
Yeah.
So every senior class, you're gonna
You
mark
gonna
somebody.
knock two down?
Yo, Mark.
You're gonna
First
mark
of all,
somebody and
I
say,
don't
I'm
know
gonna
who's-
have one
Yeah,
in first
exactly.
period,
So,
second
so
period,
the problem
third period,
with
'cause I got certain
the
off
problem with
periods.
your argument is that you're presupposing that the teacher is the predator or the teacher is the aggressor.
No,
We're not going to call
I'm
them
not.
the
I'm
the
saying
predator.
the teacher has to acquiesce, because what I know, because I was in school, is that girls and guys,
Guaranteed, I
they're
had-
going to make overtures to the teacher. We know that, but the teacher has to accept it. And
Look.
if you're going to make it open season
I
on
was
the
never
teacher,
blessed with having a fine teacher in school.
Well,
I didn't have any
sorry
Christina
about that.
Milians walk across me talking about Brendan, what's 2 times 35. Unfortunately, I couldn't let them know with pride it was 70. Had I been given that opportunity,
you weren't stimulated by the intellect of your teachers.
no. But
There's
had
so many
had
dishes he done
had
done.
Miss
So many
Millian
dishes he
had
done
Miss
done.
Millian come to me, I wouldn't want you telling me that this beautiful young lady was going to be demonized for allowing me to grace her with my presence.
Oh, your presence. Well, okay.
Brennan, I
And that's
completely understand.
PRESENTS.
Yes, I got
That's right.
I completely understand that you are obviously losing your good mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the audience know that they are free to let Brennan know that he has lost his mind and that they should not allow teachers to basically enact predatory actions on children.
I'm not saying there should be a penalty. It should be
'cause-
civil. I
'cause
don't
we
think it should be
allow- 'cause
criminal
we allow it in
for
college.
adults.
If a college student
I don't think
wants
that's
to have
right
a
either.
relationship with their professor, that's fully allowed because
It's legal, but it's also it's good school policy, which makes it a civil
I mean,
issue.
but
They get to fire you for conduct with your students.
Because my thing about it is because this is then what we're gonna start hearing. She looks 17. She looked. I mean, she told me she
Well,
was
statutory rape is statutory rape. You
can't
don't get around that.
But that's my point. You can't, and you're not allowed as a teacher to just go start looking up student files. You only have access.
But
to
what's
the
your
children.
point on that, though, Alicia? Statutory. There is no
But
curb for
I'm
statutory
not saying
rape.
there's a
That's
curb,
a choice that you make.
But my thing about it is they're going to then say, "Hey, I didn't know that this person
Right, if
wasn't
he was a
17."
senior,
and ignorance
Exactly.
is not a defense to statutory rape.
But I understand it's not a defense, but it's a slippery slope. And at the same time, you're now allowing this person to just you're going to basically bring your birth certificate before we have sex.
Well, we got to do that now when I go to the club. Shit, I need to know. First of all, I got to know if you're a woman or a man because
It's hard.
They've
out there
changed
for
the
a pimp,
game for
right?
that.
It's hard.
Next, I need to know if you're actually 18 or older because you got some young ones walking around here looking like mothers and mothers-in-law. So
oh, man.
I need, no matter if you're in the school or if you're out in the club,
Brennan,
there's still a standard.
there's so many things wrong with
I'm
you
just
right
saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, an argument that you're making. I'm gonna chalk that up to you just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
today.
it is all devil.
The devil is busy today.
But
ladies
what
and
we would like
gentlemen.
to say is we're going to wrap this up with thanking Deshonda Tackett for coming. And if you could tell the audience how they can reach you and how they can get in contact with you and your firm.
Yes, I want to thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it. You can reach me on my firm's website, www.thetacketfirm.com, or you can find us by the same name on Facebook, and that's The Tackett Firm PLLC on Facebook. You can just look us up, and we're right there.
Why you got all those white people on your website?
Well, because I help a diverse population.
Brennan,
right now.
if
So you're equal opportunity.
I am.
Brennan,
I
if
am. It doesn't
you
matter.
Don't stop.
I just want to ask a question.
I would just like to say anybody that will need help with estate planning, civil litigation, and employment discrimination, definitely contact the Tackett Firm at the avenues that Miss Tackett mentioned, and ignore Brennan.
No, hey,
And
you better
ignore
get your
Brennan.
marketing plan
And
up.
just-
Get them Caucasians out there in
No,
that marketing
this
plan.
is-
Go
this
ahead,
is-
girl.
This is not a Joanne the scammer situation.
Right?
So either way, we
Well,
want
my
to
New
say
Orleans
thank you
Bay, thank you for
to-
being on the
for-
show with
for,
us.
Thank you guys
for
for
tuning
having
in.
me.
And
Thoroughly
Brennan, how
enjoyed
can they
myself.
reach you?
Well, you can reach me on Twitter at Legal Mind. That's mine with a Y because there's always a question to be asked and answered. Alicia, what about you?
And they can reach me on Twitter and Instagram at Allie on Sphere.
That's our time, ladies and gentlemen. Hope to see you next week. As always, have a great day.
Have a good one.
All right. Thanks.